November 2nd, 1944. Somewhere over Czechoslovakia, Lieutenant Bruce Carr watches his instruments tell him a story no pilot wants to hear. The oil pressure gauge has dropped to zero. Black smoke pours from the cowling of his P-51 Mustang. The Merlin engine screams in protest, metal grinding against metal in a death rattle that every pilot knows means the end. 30 seconds ago, he was leading a strafing run against a German airfield, his aircraft part of a coordinated assault on enemy infrastructure. Now, he's a dead man flying. The damage came from flak. An 88mm shell fragment punched through the engine compartment and severed the oil line. Without oil, the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine will seize in approximately 90 seconds. After that happens, the propeller becomes a 400-pound anchor, and the P-51 becomes a glider with the aerodynamic properties of a brick. At 8,000 feet over enemy territory, that's a death sentence. Carr has one option remaining: bail out. He pulls back the canopy, rolls the dying Mustang inverted, and drops into the freezing Czechoslovakian sky. At 8,000 feet, the silk canopy deploys above him. Below, enemy territory stretches to every horizon. He's 200 miles behind German lines with no radio, no weapon except a .45 caliber pistol with 7 rounds, no food, no water. November in Central Europe means temperatures dropping below freezing at night. The mathematics of survival are brutal and well documented. American pilots shot down over occupied territory have a 23% chance of evading capture and returning to Allied lines. The other 77% spend the rest of the war in Stalag Luft III or end up in unmarked graves scattered across occupied Europe. Bruce Carr is about to become the exception to every statistic ever written about downed pilots. In 4 days, he won't just escape. He'll steal one of the most advanced fighter aircraft in the German arsenal and fly it home. Bruce Ward Carr was born January 28, 1924, in Union Springs, New York. There was nothing remarkable about his childhood except one thing that would define his entire future. At 15 years old, in 1939, Bruce Carr learned to fly. The year matters significantly. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and World War II began. A 15-year-old farm kid in upstate New York couldn't know that within 5 years he'd be dogfighting Messerschmitts over Berlin. But some part of him must have sensed that flying was about to become the most important skill a young man could possess. He didn't learn in a military program or a formal school. A local crop duster named Earl let the kid take the controls of his biplane one summer afternoon. Carr was hooked instantly. By the time he turned 16, he had more stick time than most Army Air Force cadets would accumulate in their first year of training. This foundation would prove invaluable. September 3, 1942. Carr enlists in the United States Army Air Forces. He's 18 years old and enters the aviation cadet training program. His instructor turns out to be the same man who taught him to fly 3 years earlier. Earl had joined up too. He takes one look at Carr's application, sees the 240 flight hours already logged, and recommends him for the accelerated program. By August 1943, Carr is a flight officer. By February 1944, he's in England, assigned to the 380th Fighter Squadron, 363rd Fighter Group, 9th Air Force. His first assignment is to fly the P-51 Mustang. The P-51 is the finest propeller-driven fighter aircraft ever built. The numbers tell the story. Range of 1,650 miles with drop tanks, enough to escort bombers from England to Berlin and back. top speed of 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. Service ceiling of 41,900 feet. Armament consists of 6.35 caliber M2 Browning machine guns with 1,880 rounds total. Enough firepower to shred a German bomber in a 2-second burst. Before the P-51D arrived in numbers, American daylight bombing raids suffered catastrophic losses. The 8th Air Force lost 60 bombers in a single mission over Schweinfurt in October 1943. Without fighter escort, the B-17s and B-24s were sitting ducks for Luftwaffe interceptors. The Mustang changed everything. For the first time, American fighters could accompany bombers all the way to the target and back. German pilots called them the long-nosed bastards. The Luftwaffe began hemorrhaging experienced pilots faster than training schools could replace them. Carr falls in love with the aircraft instantly. The cockpit fits him like a glove. The controls are responsive. The visibility excellent. The power intoxicating. He names his plane Angel's Playmate. He has no idea that in 8 months he'll be sitting in a very different cockpit, one with German labels and a swastika on the tail. On March 8, 1944, Flight Officer Carr scores his first combat engagement. He spots a Messerschmitt Bf 109 over Germany and gives chase. The German pilot tries to escape by diving for the deck, flying just above the treetops. Carr follows without hesitation. The chase covers 40 miles at speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour. Both aircraft barely clearing the German forests. Carr fires. His rounds miss. He fires again. One bullet clips the 109's left wing. The German pilot panics. He pulls up and ejects, but he's too low. The parachute doesn't fully deploy. The pilot hits the ground at 60 miles per hour. The 109 crashes into a hillside. Carr returns to base, expecting congratulations. Instead, his commanding officer calls him into the office with a stern expression. The verdict is harsh. That was the most over-aggressive flying ever witnessed. Carr nearly killed himself chasing that German into the trees. He's being transferred. The kill doesn't count officially. Technically, Carr didn't shoot the plane down. The pilot killed himself trying to escape. It's the first indication that Bruce Carr doesn't think like other pilots. Where others see recklessness, he sees opportunity. Where others see limits, he sees suggestions. May 1944. Carr transfers to the 353rd Fighter Squadron, 354th Fighter Group, known as the Pioneer Mustang Group, the first Army Air Forces unit in Europe to fly P-51s in combat. These are the best Mustang pilots in the war. Carr fits right in with their aggressive tactics and fearless approach. June 17, 1944, 11 days after D-Day, Carr scores his first official kill, sharing credit for an FW-90 destroyed over Normandy. 2 months later, he makes second lieutenant. September 12, 1944, Carr's flight strafes a German airfield, destroying several Junkers Ju-88 bombers on the ground. On the return flight, they spot 30 FW-190s 2,000 feet below them. Carr doesn't hesitate. He dives. In the next 3 minutes, he shoots down 3 German fighters in rapid succession. When his wingman takes damage, Carr escorts him all the way back to friendly territory, foregoing any additional kills to protect his fellow pilot. The action earns him the Silver Star, the second highest combat decoration for valor in the United States military. October 29, 1944. Carr downs 2 Bf-109s over Germany. Total confirmed kills now stand at 7.5. He's officially an ace. joining the elite ranks of fighter pilots who have achieved 5 or more aerial victories. 4 days later, his luck runs out. November 2nd, 1944. Carr hits the frozen Czechoslovakian ground hard. The parachute landing isn't gentle. His ankle twists on impact. Not broken, but badly sprained. He gathers the silk canopy and buries it under leaves. The Germans will search for him. They always search. He has maybe 20 minutes before patrols arrive. Carr knows the airfield he was strafing is approximately 5 miles north. He knows the Germans will expect him to move south or west, toward Allied lines. He knows his survival depends on doing something unexpected. He heads north toward the enemy. The logic is counterintuitive, but sound. The Germans will search outward from his landing site, assuming he's running away. They won't expect him to move closer to their base. And if he's going to survive, he needs supplies. Food, water, maybe a weapon. The airfield has all 3. Day 1. Carr moves through the forest, staying off roads, traveling at night. His flight suit provides minimal warmth. His ankle throbs with every step. He hasn't eaten in 18 hours. Day 2. He finds a stream and drinks. The water is cold enough to numb his throat. He spots a German patrol 200 yards away and lies motionless in a ditch for 2 hours while they pass within earshot. Day 3. The hunger becomes impossible to ignore. Carr is burning 4,000 calories a day just staying warm. He's consumed 0. His body begins cannibalizing muscle tissue for energy. He makes a decision. Tomorrow, he'll surrender. The Luftwaffe treats captured pilots better than the Wehrmacht or the SS. Aviators have a code. They respect fellow flyers, even enemy ones. Carr knows pilots who've spent time in Stalag Luft 3. They describe it as boring but survivable. 3 meals a day, Red Cross packages, letters from home. It beats starving to death in a Czechoslovakian forest. Day 4, late afternoon. Carr reaches the edge of the German airfield. He's positioned in a tree line overlooking the eastern perimeter. Through the branches, he can see hangars, fuel trucks, aircraft. FW-190s mostly, a few Bf-109s scattered among them. He plans to wait until morning, then walk to the main gate with his hands up. But as darkness falls, Carr notices something that changes everything. A revetment sits 80 yards from his position. A Focke-Wulf Fw-190 sits inside, partially concealed by camouflage netting. 2 German mechanics are working on the aircraft under portable lights. Carr watches, carefully. The mechanics check the fuel level. Full tanks. They run up the engine, the distinctive sound of the BMW 801 radial roaring to life. They cycle the propeller, check the magnetos, run through what appears to be a complete pre-flight inspection. Then they shut it down, cover the cockpit, and walk back toward the main hangars. The FW-90 is ready to fly. Carr's brain begins calculating possibilities. He's never flown a German aircraft. He doesn't speak German. He has no idea where the controls are, how the engine starts, or how the landing gear operates. But he knows how to fly. He's logged over 500 combat hours. Every aircraft has a throttle, a stick, and rudder pedals. The physics don't change because the labels are in German. And he's looking at a fully fueled fighter aircraft with no guard. The surrender plan evaporates. Carr waits until 3 in the morning. The airfield is quiet. Skeleton crew on night watch. No activity near the revetment. He moves. 80 yards of open ground. No cover. If anyone looks in his direction, He's dead. Carr covers the distance in 40 seconds, staying low. His twisted ankle screams with every step. The FW-190 is larger than he expected. Wingspan 34 feet. Length 29 feet. Empty weight 7,000 pounds. Nearly a ton heavier than the P-51. The cockpit sits high, protected by 30mm armored glass. The BMW 801 engine dominates the nose, a 14-cylinder air-cooled radial producing 1,700 horsepower. The Focke-Wulf Fw-190 is Germany's premier fighter. First deployed in 1941, it outclassed the Spitfire so thoroughly that the British rushed development of new variants just to compete. German pilots called it Würger, the butcher bird. Allied pilots called it Trouble. The aircraft Carr has just climbed into is likely an A8 variant, the most common model in late 1944. Standard armament includes two 13mm MG-131 machine guns in the cowling and four 20mm MG-151 cannons in the wings. Maximum speed of 408 miles per hour. Range of 500 miles. A deadly machine in the hands of an experienced pilot. Carr is not an experienced FW-190 pilot. He's never sat in one before. He's never seen the inside of one. Everything he knows about this aircraft comes from gun camera footage of them exploding under his fire. Carr climbs onto the wing. The canopy is unlocked. He slides it back and drops into the cockpit. The first thing he notices is that he can't read anything. Every label, every gauge, every switch is in German. The instrument panel is a wall of incomprehensible Gothic script. The second thing he notices is that the cockpit is smaller than the P-51's. His knees press against the instrument panel. The control stick falls naturally to his right hand. The throttle is on the left, same as American aircraft. Some things are universal. Carr has approximately 4 hours until sunrise. He uses every minute. He traces wiring. He identifies gauges by their position. Airspeed is usually top left. Altimeter top center. Engine instruments clustered on the right. He finds the fuel selector, the magneto switches, the propeller control. The starter is the critical piece. In the P-51, it's an electrical system. In the FW-190, he has no idea. On the right side of the cockpit, he finds a T-shaped handle with German text. The word looks vaguely like starter. He pulls it. Nothing happens. He pushes it. A mechanical whine fills the cockpit, an inertia starter winding up like a toy. He lets it spin for 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Then he pulls the handle. The BMW 801 coughs, catches, roars to life. The noise is apocalyptic. 1,700 horsepower at idle still sounds like thunder. Every German on the airfield will hear it. Carr has seconds. He doesn't have time to find the runway, doesn't have time to check the brakes or the flaps or the radio. He shoves the throttle forward. The FW-190 lurches. The tail comes up almost immediately. This aircraft is nose-heavy, eager to fly. Through the pre-dawn darkness, Carr aims between two hangars. Ground crew are emerging, shouting, pointing. 60 miles per hour, 70. The hangars rush toward him. At 90 miles per hour, Carr pulls back on the stick. The FW-190 leaps into the air, clearing the hangar roofs by what feels like inches. He's airborne in a stolen German fighter, 200 miles behind enemy lines. Now comes the hard part. The FW-190's cockpit is a nightmare of unfamiliar systems. But Carr solves problems one at a time. Landing gear. He finds a lever on the left console, pulls it. A satisfying thunk. The gear retracts. The aircraft accelerates. Compass. He identifies the gyro compass and orients himself west-southwest toward France, toward Allied lines. Altitude. He climbs to 500 feet, then thinks better of it. At altitude, he's visible to German radar, to German fighters, to German anti-aircraft batteries tracking everything that moves. He drops to treetop level, 50 feet above the ground, 280 miles per hour. The Czechoslovakian forest becomes a green blur beneath his wings. This is insane flying. One mistake, one moment of inattention, and he'll cartwheel through the trees at 300 miles per hour. But at treetop level, he's invisible to radar. He's too low for flak. He's too fast for ground troops to target. The fuel gauge shows full tanks. The FW-90 has a range of approximately 500 miles. France is 200 miles away. He has margin for error. For 45 minutes, Carr flies west. The sun rises behind him. The terrain changes from forest to farmland to the scarred battlefields of eastern France. He crosses the front lines, and that's when his problems really begin. Allied anti-aircraft gunners see what they expect to see. A German FW-19 flying at low altitude toward Allied positions. They open fire. 50 caliber tracers arc toward Carr from every direction. He's taking fire from his own seat. He has no radio to announce himself, no way to signal that he's friendly. The FW-190 still carries German markings. The black crosses on the wings, the swastika on the tail. Carr does the only thing he can. Fly lower and faster. He drops to 20 feet, hedge-hopping. The propeller wash kicks up dust from the roads below. French civilians dive into ditches as he screams overhead. American soldiers fire rifles at him. Every gun in France is shooting at Bruce Carr. He later estimates that every 50 caliber machine gun in existence took shots at him during that 30-mile sprint to his home base. The FW-190 takes hits. He can hear the impacts, feel the shudders, but the German engineering holds. The aircraft keeps flying. Ahead, he recognizes the airfield, A-66 at Orconte, France, home of the 354th Fighter Group. He lines up for approach. No time for pattern work, no time for radio calls. The anti-aircraft batteries are already tracking him. That's when he discovers the final problem. The landing gear won't come down. Carr pulls the lever. Nothing. He pumps it. Nothing. He looks for a backup system, an emergency release. Anything. The FW-190's landing gear operates on hydraulic pressure. There's a selector valve that directs pressure either to retraction or extension. Carr doesn't know this. He doesn't know which lever controls the valve. He doesn't know that he's been pulling the wrong handle for the last 5 minutes. Below him, the 354th's anti-aircraft crews are loading their 40mm Bofors guns. A German fighter is circling their field. They're preparing to blow him out of the sky. Carr makes a decision. He's going to belly land. He lines up with the grass beside the main runway, lowers the flaps, that lever at least he figured out, and cuts the throttle. The FW-190 sinks. 100 feet, 50 feet, 20 feet. The aircraft hits the grass at 90 miles per hour, slides for 300 yards, throws up a rooster tail of mud and debris, and grinds to a stop. Carr is alive. Within seconds, the FW-90 is surrounded. Military police with rifles raised, screaming at the pilot to get out of the cockpit. They're expecting a German. They're expecting a prisoner. The canopy slides back. A mud-splattered American in a torn flight suit climbs onto the wing. "I'm Captain Carr of this goddamn squadron." Nobody believes him. He's been missing for 4 days. He's supposed to be dead or captured, and he just belly landed a German fighter on their airfield. The MPs keep their rifles trained on him until a staff car arrives. Colonel George Bickel, commanding officer of the 354th Fighter Group, steps out and looks at the scene. The destroyed Fw, the mud-covered pilot, the bewildered military police. Bickel says, "Where in the hell have you been, and what have you been doing now?" The story spreads through the Army Air Forces like wildfire. The pilot who stole a German plane, the only American in the European theater to take off in a P-51 and return in an Fw-190. But Carr's war isn't over. 5 months later, April 2nd, 1945, near Schweinfurt, Germany. First Lieutenant Carr is leading a flight of 4 P-51s on a reconnaissance mission. They're at 15,000 feet when Carr spots movement above them. German fighters, more than he can count. A massive formation stacked from 18,000 to 25,000 feet. Carr does a quick estimate. 60 aircraft, maybe more. Bf-109s and Fw-190s mixed. The largest concentration of German fighters he's ever seen. He has 4 P-51s. The German formation is massive. Bf-109 G-10s and Fw-190 D-9s, the latest variants of both aircraft. Fresh pilots, relatively speaking. The Luftwaffe has been running out of experienced aviators since early 1944, but 60 aircraft is 60 aircraft. Standard tactics dictate immediate evasion. 4 against 60 is suicide. The Germans have altitude advantage, numerical advantage, and positional advantage. Every manual ever written says disengage and report. Let the bomber escort squadrons know what's coming. Get out alive. Bruce Carr has never been particularly interested in what the manuals say. He keys his radio. Engaging. His wingmen don't hesitate. They've flown with Carr before. They know what he's capable of. They know that when Carr says engaging, he means it. The 4 Mustangs climb into the German formation. What happens next is one of the most remarkable air battles of World War II. The Germans don't expect an attack. They're flying in a loose defensive formation, conserving fuel, probably heading to intercept a bomber stream. 4 American fighters climbing directly into their midst makes no tactical sense. Carr uses the confusion. He slips into the back of the formation, positions himself behind a Bf-109, and fires. The German pilot never sees him. The 109 explodes. Carr shifts to another target, an Fw-190. 3 seconds of 50 caliber fire. The Focke-Wulf rolls inverted and plummets toward the earth. The German formation begins to scatter. They don't know how many Americans are attacking. They don't know where the fire is coming from. Carr moves through them like a wolf through sheep, picking targets, firing, moving. 3rd kill, 4th kill, 5th kill. In the space of 3 minutes, First Lieutenant Bruce Carr shoots down 5 German aircraft. His wingmen account for 10 more. 4 American pilots. 15 German aircraft destroyed. 0 American losses. When the ammunition runs out, Carr leads his flight home. The surviving Germans, 45 of them, scatter across the German countryside. April 9th, 1945. Bruce Carr is promoted to captain. The Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor, is awarded for his actions on April 2nd. The citation reads in part, completely disregarding his personal safety and the enemy's overwhelming numerical superiority and tactical advantage of altitude, He led his element in a direct attack on the hostile force, personally destroying 5 enemy aircraft and damaging still another. Carr becomes the last ace in a day in the European theater of World War II. No American pilot will match his feat before Germany surrenders on May 8, 1945. By the end of the war, he's flown 172 combat missions and accumulated 14 or 15 confirmed aerial victories. The records differ slightly, plus numerous ground kills. He's 21 years old. The war ends. Bruce Carr stays in uniform. He joins the Acrojets, America's first jet aerobatic demonstration team, flying F-80 Shooting Stars. Then Korea arrives, where he flies 57 combat missions in F-86 Sabres with the 336th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. He commands the 336th from 1955 to 1956. Colonel's eagles on his shoulders. The kid from Union Springs, New York, running a fighter squadron. Then Vietnam. Colonel Carr, now 44 years old, flies 286 combat missions in F-100 Super Sabres. Close air support, bombing runs, strafing missions, the same work he did 24 years earlier, in a different war, in a different aircraft. 3 wars, 3 aircraft generations, 515 combat missions total. He retires in 1973 after a career spanning 3 decades and 3 major conflicts. April 25, 1998, St. Cloud, Florida. Bruce Ward Carr dies of prostate cancer. He's 74 years old. They bury him in Arlington National Cemetery, Section 64, Grave 6922, among the heroes of every American war since the Revolution. Within sight of the tomb of the unknown soldier, across the river from the Lincoln Memorial. The headstone lists his rank, Colonel, United States Air Force. It lists his decorations, Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross with clusters, Air Medal with clusters, Purple Heart. It lists his wars, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. It doesn't mention the Focke-Wulf. It doesn't mention the 4 days in the Czechoslovakian forest. It doesn't mention the belly landing with no gear. The MPs pointing rifles at his face. The commanding officer asking where the hell he'd been. Some stories don't fit on headstones. There are 2 ways to tell the story of Bruce Carr. The first is the legend. The downed pilot who stole a German fighter from an active airfield, figured out the controls by trial and error, and flew 200 miles back to Allied territory, while every gun in Europe shot at him. The second is the documented record. The ace with 15 kills, the Silver Star recipient, the Distinguished Service Cross winner, the man who led 4 aircraft against 60 and won. Both are true. Both are remarkable. But here's what matters most. In November 1944, an American pilot found himself alone, unarmed, and stranded 200 miles behind enemy lines. The rational choice was surrender. The safe choice was giving up. Bruce Carr chose differently. He looked at a German fighter aircraft covered in unfamiliar instruments and saw, not an obstacle, but an opportunity. He climbed into a cockpit he'd never seen, started an engine he'd never operated, and flew an aircraft he'd never touched before. Not because he was reckless, but because he refused to accept that his options were limited to the ones that seemed possible. 4 months later, faced with 60 enemy fighters and 4 friendly aircraft, he made the same calculation. The rational choice was retreat. The safe choice was survival. He chose attack, and 15 German pilots never made it home. In 1997, a year before his death, Colonel Carr flew one more time. Kermit Weeks's Fantasy of Flight Museum in Florida had invited him for an air show. Carr, now 73, arrived in a P-51 Mustang, his own aircraft maintained in flying condition. He came in over the crowd at 300 knots, 50 feet off the deck, the same approach he'd used 50 years earlier, flying a stolen Focke-Wulf into a French airfield while his own side tried to shoot him down. Some things, apparently, never change. The crowd watched a 73-year-old man throw a World War II fighter through maneuvers that would challenge pilots half his age. Loops, rolls, high G turns that pressed him into his seat at forces that would gray out younger men. When he landed, someone asked him what he was thinking up there. He shrugged with characteristic understatement. Same thing I was always thinking. What's the airplane capable of? What am I capable of? Let's find out. That's the Bruce Carr story. Not the stolen fighter, not the 15 kills, not the 3 wars and 515 combat missions. The story is simpler than that. The story is a pilot who looked at impossible odds and asked one question. What else can I do? And then he did it.